Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast, where once again, Kathy, Mark, and Burk talk about movies. We do that every time. Every time we have a podcast.
I literally know about nothing else.
I know, it's weird.
It's the only study I have invested any time into.
But you know what time of year it is? It's the happiest time of year. It's everybody's favorite holiday.
Get your silver shamrock masks ready.
Yeah.
It's a favorite time of year, and it's the title of one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
The original
Christmas
Halloween.
Story. The Christmas Story is so funny.
The original Halloween was made in 7 days for $300,000.
Yeah.
And it kicked off the entire slasher franchise.
Yeah.
Some say maybe it was Black Christmas, but I think Halloween kind of cemented the genre. Black Christmas kind of started it, but really Halloween created the never-ending, never-dying killer. I think
John Carpenter's
John Carpenter
Halloween.
For that.
You know what? That movie is a hot rod. It is a machine that has no extraneous parts. There's nothing on
Lean
it.
and mean.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's like it works so perfectly. Everything in that movie is there for a reason, and it works, and it's inspired. Yeah. It's an absolute. Study this film if you want to make movies. If you want to make your own films or get into filmmaking, study that movie. Even if you don't like horror movies, it's a masterclass in storytelling and pacing and suspense and character development and just
it grabs you from the first second, because I saw it opening night,
great opening
1978, 17 years old. Go in there. And just, it comes out as a Compass International release, and then the music starts. And I go,
great music by Carpenter.
Yep.
Wow, what is this? And I hadn't seen a lot of horror movies up at that point.
Yeah.
Like this, and for the 90 minutes, it's still one of my favorite movie experiences because everybody was so into it. And it's a horror movie, people die, but there's something up about the movie, something sort of weirdly like energizing. It's like a roller coaster ride, and it's nonstop, lean, as you said, and Michael Myers is this thing that doesn't die? Is this? And you don't get that. Like you thought it was just some guy, but you find out what he is, and it was just chilling and great and fun.
And he's not really supernatural. He doesn't have extra powers. He's not extra strong. I mean, to a point he is, but it's mostly I think just fueled by his killer rage. But he's not like anything fancy like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. He didn't come back from the dead, or did he? But that's what I think I liked about it, is it's pretty grounded. And I think that makes it creepier because it does feel like something that could happen in your neighborhood, which I think it does in some neighborhoods.
The characters are well drawn, as much as they can be drawn in a film like this. Yeah. The setting is just brilliant. I mean, it's set in Haddonfield, Illinois, but it's it is California stuff, but it's just a great suburbia, with the leaves and kind of
the leaves
scary
thing. He really captured the time of year too, that Halloween time of year when the leaves are blowing through the street and the way it looks. I mean, just that nostalgia of your neighborhood, the average American neighborhood, and here's a thing. And I think the supernatural aspect of the character of the killer is it's not overt, but it's just enough to suggest that there's something extra about him. And I think he sort of I think the pitch to this was probably, I want the thing to represent evil.
Mm-hmm. He's called the Shape. He's not called Michael Myers in the credits.
He's wearing the William Shatner mask.
Yeah.
That has been sort of tweaked as the sequels have happened, but it's based on that, which I think is even funnier.
They just painted it white, and it's... Yeah.
And
it's bought in a Halloween store, I guess. And
I can always watch it, and it's always good. It's like a comfort food movie for me. And of course, there were sequels, Halloween 2, and then Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which was a different sort of film.
Yeah.
And then a few more sequels, and then kind of went away for a while. Then it came back with H2O in the late 90s, and then the Rob Zombie films. And then in 2018, David Gordon Green directed Halloween, sort of like the fresh reboot. Like forgetting about all the other sequels, like this happens.
I loved that idea.
The first one,
I loved it because I didn't think the sequels were great. I actually kind of liked H2O because it got very personal with, Jamie Lee Curtis. She had a lot to do in that movie, but mostly the sequels were very disposable and unmemorable, and shouldn't have been made. So I love their idea of starting it as a direct sequel to the first movie and just moving from there and forgetting everything else. So I had high hopes. And they sounded like they're true fans, and they really wanted to do a good job on it. They brought in Carpenter to do the music. They had his blessing. He's a producer. So, that seemed like, hey, how could it go wrong? Well, not a huge fan of the first sequel. Not okay.
Yeah, again, I didn't like it either because for me, I mean, what makes the first film so interesting is you really don't get a lot of backstory, just enough of who this Michael Myers is. But when they start going into who he is, the relationships, it's like it takes all the mystique and the mystery out of that thing. All of a sudden, it's just all this backstory and characters I don't care about, and it just sort of it gets very fat, it gets very blubbery, and it's just the leanness is gone.
Yeah, but they envisioned this as a trilogy, so now we're on our second one. So now we've got our second sequel to the first set of sequels, or second set of sequels. So now we have Halloween Kills.
The sequels to the sequels.
Yes. I guess it's its own storyline almost. Like
the reboot,
the reboot. The
reboot
sort of like
trilogy.
Doctor Who reboot. Except that's so much better.
But that they make Doctor Who continuous. That's there's a trick there. But this one I think is supposed to be a completely different Michael Myers, right?
Nope. Same exact
guy. He's experienced all the things from those other films.
Yes.
Well, sort of.
No, just from the first film.
The first film, like
the first
Halloween
new film.
2.
No,
yeah, the first.
This one you mean? See, it's confusing to talk about.
Yeah.
It is confusing, but the first Halloween, the one from 2018, the first one with David Gordon Green, it's a sequel to the very first Halloween. Like Halloween 2 never happened.
As if the sequels didn't happen.
Yeah, so now we're technically Halloween 2.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it starts with after
3.
the murders and stuff. So this Halloween Kills.
Halloween Kills is 3.
It's like a continuation of that first night where the 3 original babysitters are killed, but it's 40 years later.
Right.
But the movie starts. This one starts in 1978,
which was confusing because the last thing we saw was, Laurie Strode's house burning down because she set the trap for Michael Myers in her basement, and they trapped him in this basement, and they were going to burn him up. And they thought, there's no way he can survive a burning up. He's trapped. He's done. And that's where it ended, pretty much.
But this starts with a flashback to 1978. I mean, there is a little scene
which I
before
kind of loved.
I mean, it's hard to capture like what a feeling like. They're trying to go back and kind of film it the way John Carpenter filmed it, like a lot of like wide shots.
Yeah.
And it felt like, oh, this is really well done. This feels like kind of a continuation of the first film.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just the setting and everything. They had the old music, the original music is in there. And so the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this is kind of...
Yeah, I was like, wow, this is... And it was sort of basically the focus of the cops, what they were doing during this time when there was a killer loose in the neighborhood. So you have this parallel storyline of them trying to track down Michael Myers that we never saw because we were seeing it from Laurie's point of view.
Exactly.
So I thought that was kind of a really kind of smart, concept. Like, why? I would like to just see a whole movie of that. Like, why didn't we just stay with that? Because that could have been interesting.
Because it was interesting. The cop characters were interesting, and when they're running around, you get that sense of it's right back to the first film. So that was a very encouraging first, opening prologue to the film. Then the opening credits come, and it's just like the opening credits to the first film with the music. So I was like, okay, I'm liking this. The first 15 minutes, I'm digging it. And then they went to 2018.
And they pick up right at the point where Laurie Strode and her family are on their way to the hospital because Laurie has been, Jamie Lee Curtis has been mortally wounded. She has a terrible, because Michael did his thing, she's been stabbed. So they're all leaving, and the firemen are showing up to the burning down house, and she's, yelling, "Let it burn!" She does not want to save Michael, and so they don't even know he's down there. They just think a house is on fire, and all the women left, and everything's good. So that's where we pick up, like literally right after the Halloween. The second. That's like talking about Star Wars, where you don't know where you are in the storyline.
Yeah, the chronology gets mixed up.
So we're going to talk about it as like this is
and whatnot.
But this is
canon.
This is 40 years later. All the young Tommy and the young Lindsay are grown up.
Which I love that idea too. I like checking in on these side characters that were in the first film. That was like they're all grown up. They've been kind of damaged by what happened to them.
Yeah, and Lindsay, who's played by Kyle Richards, is again played by Kyle Richards. It's really the same actress 40 years later. And then Tommy is played now by Anthony Michael Hall.
Right.
and he remembers what happened 40 years ago, and he commemorates it at this karaoke bar, and he tells the story and kind of brings everybody down in the bar.
Yeah.
And he's sort of like the posse guy, and he says, we have to, because they find out that he didn't die, of course, and it turns into this like purge movie where the whole town is going after evil dies tonight is the mantra.
Boy, did they say that a lot.
So it's the townspeople with baseball bats and guns and knives trying to kill Michael. And that's what the movie turns into. All these extraneous characters, people we don't know, getting into these fights with Michael, doing stupid things and getting killed. I mean, it was just like, and it just turns into this mess of a movie. I mean, like, it's like Michael Myers is killing people by, eye gouging and knives through the eye, all this kind of stuff. They're not really interesting kills. No. They're not interestingly shot. There's nothing scary about that stuff. It's just a lot of blood and action stuff. And I don't care about the characters. And Jamie Lee Curtis, the character I care about, is barely in the film.
No.
I mean, of course she's in the hospital and she's mortally wounded. I get it. She's not going to be out fighting, but I don't know.
I did like him walking out of the fire. That was pretty well done. This opening scene was pretty well done. But he ultimately becomes sort of the Terminator. Like, I think the thing I liked about Michael Myers is that he's still a human, and even though he's extra strong and, like I said, he's fueled with rage and he's unstoppable, I think it's mostly because people are so fucking dumb, and that if one smart person had been in this movie, Michael had been done for. And I also I like the and we're going to talk about some spoilers, so spoilers little spoilers.
People die. The spoilers, a lot of people die in the movie.
People die, don't get attached, and you won't, because you don't give a shit about anyone in this movie. And it's like it's that sort of thing where if you're gonna have it, I think the problem was that it had a weird uneven tone. And if you're gonna have this sort of Terminator Michael who's killing in ways Michael Myers never killed before, like he's not a fancy killer. He stabs people 99% of the time. It's just a stabbing, and he's done, and he walks away, and that's it. I mean, he's not gouging eyes. He's not, stabbing people with multiple knives. He's not, they kind of go into this Jason Voorhees style of killing, which is any available weapon anytime, and it's just overkill. The entire thing is he's just like a machine. And yeah, my main complaint, I think, is because Laurie Strode is basically sidelined the entire film, and we have Jamie Lee Curtis in the film, and she's in the hospital the whole time, and that was super aggravating, and I hate when they do that.
Yeah,
it's like you got this strong character, and the only person you give a shit about, and she doesn't do anything except talk a lot about how it's all her fault, which it's not.
There's a lot of side weird things, just weird story choices. Like in the first Halloween, the 2018 Halloween, 40 years later, Michael Myers is being transported in this bus, and the bus crashes, and Michael Myers escapes with this other patient. And somehow this other patient, who's a mental patient, who's in a smock, and he has this, he's with long hair, and he's just
such a stupid device,
babbling, and he's sort of running around, and the mob thinks that's Michael, run after Michael, and it's not Michael, it's obviously not him. But they spend a good half hour in the hospital running up and down the
huge
stairs.
Set piece of this mob in the hospital chasing this guy through the corridors who just wanted help, who wasn't even aggressive. He was just like, he even looks in there like, help me. Somebody help me. He's just this kind of overweight, kind of sad guy. And then he's scared and he starts running and they chase him. And I'm like, it's just,
it was like
it's weird to say a movie is mean, even though but it was just mean spirited. It felt like it was just
horror films are mean spirited. And I think they sort of, it's like, that's a substitute for substance in some cases for me. It's like, we don't really have any good ideas. Let's just make something that's really shockingly mean and and unpleasant,
and there's a lot of
offensive.
mean, like a lot of killings here that were
this scene. Who are these people? Why did he kill them so terribly? Why are they torturing him? Like, this is the entire scene basically. It's like, why? Like, I just thought it was a wasted.
It was. I think they were trying to make some sort of comment on mob mentality, and like this.
But why did Michael attack these? Why were they targets? Like he broke into their house. they weren't living in his house.
They
I
just
know that
wanna
was one
get-
of the reasons those other two people died, because he was in his original house.
Right.
But it was
they
kind of
just wanted to kill
arbitrary.
people.
I didn't get, and then also thought it was shot kind of awkwardly. I feel like the kills felt like kind of slow and awkward, and they lacked sort of an energy. Like when he attacks those people in the car, none of it made any sense. Everybody was moving really slow, and then he was kind of going in and grabbing him and pulling him. I'm like, you could easily walk away from him, and so they do. And so if you're going to walk away from Michael Myers, you're going to run off into the woods. Run off into the woods away from it. You run down the street to the nearest town
You've been watching Walking Dead or something.
No, but it's just, I don't like when you're having to root for characters that are just doing every stupid thing they can do.
Right.
And it's really hard to root for anyone doing that. And even Laurie Strode's granddaughter, like, I'm going to join this mob and go hunt him down and go into Michael Myers' house with the stupid shotgun.
Right.
And it was just,
and they can't
so
shoot it
badly
straight.
planned. Oh.
And at the
No
end-
one can shoot.
And they also panic. That's the other thing, is people panicking where they see something and they're just like, and they can't move. They're so scared they can't move. And then they just like, and they can't shoot straight. And it's like.
And also the kind of wasted. I love the idea they're going into Michael Myers' house, which I'm not sure why it wasn't torn down, but it was rebuilt. It was
The house that
renovated. No, this is Michael Myers'
his
house. That was
his
Laurie's
original
house.
house.
Oh, okay.
The kid's house, the little kid in the clown mask.
Right.
So a gay couple moved into this house and renovated it. And they like to do that on Halloween, scare people like, this is where Michael Myers is from, which is kind of funny. It's a funny idea. Okay. Why is that? Why is it not torn down? Number one.
Right.
And then when people show up to this house and you know that you found dead people in the house and you hear people knocking around, why are you going toward the sounds? Why are you hanging around in this house? And why do you stop to look at the dead people? And Michael Myers is there. It was one of those like, it's like,
nobody makes smart moves in this film, and there's not one person that is like, all of us would have been in Haddonfield going, okay, he's down and out, he's been knocked out, there's a group of 10 people, let's now cut off his head or something, whatever, because he's going to come back, and of course he does. It was infuriating.
Well, I guess we have to realize that the people in the film have not seen any of the films.
But it has 40 years later after this death and stuff, so they have to have a little backstory, and they're mad enough to want to go out and kill him, but then they just don't, they just don't do it, and they just do everything wrong all the time, and so it's just one of those movies. I want smart people in a horror movie. Smarter
There's
people
no reason
than me.
not to be. There's no the thing is,
that
they've
takes
had
clever writing. You have to write clever to make clever characters. You have to create characters that do smart things. In order to do that, you have to be sort of smart to writing. You have to write smart. And I think sometimes they're writing down to the audience,
I don't know what they're doing. Technically this town has had 40 years to prepare for Michael Myers.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had 40 years of knowing who he is, what he's done, how he does it, and he escapes in another stupid way, including, why do we have this other character who's like, why is this character in this? I don't know why this other person's in this movie. But the biggest cardinal rule, the biggest, I feel like the thing they failed on the most is they actually unmasked him. And I think you cannot, here's Michael Myers is kind of middle-aged now, and there's nothing scary about this guy. And so they take his mask off, and I'm like, why? It's no doubt. And so I saw that, and I was just like, they've lost me. I just can't after that.
Well,
that was almost the end. They lost me way before that. But I felt like that was a really bad choice of doing that.
Going back to Burke's point about writing down, like, they have to think like, okay, I'm writing to the fans of Halloween, the people that know this movie, they know this franchise. So don't write down, write up, make us be surprised by stuff. Yeah. That's hard to do, and
it's harder to do that. And it's
harder
like the assumption is just like, there's just dumb kids are in the theater screaming and shouting and laughing, and let's just write whatever.
Or on Peacock, watching Peacock.
Yeah.
Anyway, it could have been a great movie if they write up and make it interesting and take the story in different directions. It doesn't have to be this purge movie. It can take left turns and make really clever, smart decisions and make it exciting and new, like the original Halloween was. This is just like every slasher movie that has been made since 1978, just with bigger production values.
God, you're giving it a lot of credit, though. I feel like it's not even like all the slasher movies. It's so much worse. And not only that, I feel like what they did is they did not understand. They completely totally misunderstood why the first movie worked. And they just went off and made this big clunky Friday the 13th, which is not, I mean, Halloween is a tone. It's kind of a quiet, like Michael Myers is kind of quiet and he's sneaky and he goes in and he dispatches people and he's done. And there's sort of an elegance to Halloween. I know it sounds weird to say that. This is just a big, loud, crash and burn, crazy, and it just did not feel like a Halloween movie. It could have been anybody. And they could have made this, it didn't have to be Michael Myers at all. I mean,
like you were saying, the Terminator, that kind of a character.
It was a Terminator. Like, you just can't stop
a Terminator. He's not the Terminator. He's not a robot. He's like a. Yeah, I mean, if you get the character, then I guess you're.
Watch the first movie in the early scene when Dr. Loomis and the nurse Marion, who actually has a small role in this film, drive up in the dark, in the rain, to the mental health hospital, and that you see these people walking around almost like robots. That sent chills down my spine when I first saw it. I said, "Oh my God, that's what you want."
There's no chills in this.
Right.
No.
You're getting hit over the head over and over again. And I feel like the kills were kind of mean-spirited. There's a fine line. I know it sounds weird when you say, but the movie's mean. When you're talking about slasher movies or horror movies, there is a line where you feel like the filmmakers are just being mean. Yeah. And I know that there is a way, you're killing people anyway, but I felt like the killing of the certain, all the diverse characters in the film that they decide we're going to be progressive and put a bunch of diversity in this film, and they instantly kill them all for no stupid reason. And not even in a cool way, like just kind of like, who cares? Not inventive, not interesting. They just kill these people and leave them laying there. It's just, I just didn't understand the point of it. And I didn't understand why they were a target in the first place. And then you have the poor mentally ill guy who ends up jumping out a window. And I think part of it is the mob thing. I liked the beginning of that. I liked that they added that mob mentality, but you didn't need a whole movie of it. I think they should have had the mob. They get it wrong. They're gone. Die. Goodbye. It's like, I don't think we needed to see the mob through the entire film.
That's why it turned into a purge movie. That's what the film
It really
was.
Did.
Yeah, it was a mob going after this one guy and doing it, and the worst mob, the worst posse ever in the history of movie.
They were terrible.
The Apple
Evil
Dumpling Gang
dies
would
tonight.
be smarter.
And it was Anthony Michael Hall. I like in a lot of movies. He's a decent actor. The acting was not good. But I don't think it was anyone's fault because they just had nothing to work with. Nothing.
I don't blame the actors. Judy Greer. I like the actors in this film, but it's just the writing. It's all over the place that it just none of it sticks. There's no landings that are stuck.
I was glad to see a lot of these people die. I was just glad. I actually was glad Judy Greer. I was like, I wanted to see these people die because they were so stupid. And then, you have Will Patton, and Will Patton joins the fray. He's also just laying down in the hospital. They must have just had them for like a day to shoot. Yeah. And let's just put them in this hospital room and have this cheesy discussion that no one cares about. And then we'll go back to the action. And it was like, oh man, what a waste.
It's such a bummer.
Such good actors.
It's such a bummer that, because I love the first film so much. I guess you just can't remake it, but they could have done something interesting and different.
I would love to see Ari Aster do it.
Oh,
I think he's above that though. Isn't the concept of this just a guy who goes and kills people?
Yeah, but you can make it interesting. But I think it's for a young filmmaker to come up with something different. Mm-hmm. Like Halloween 3, a lot of people hate and it's boring, and I like it because at least it's something different and something kind of fun.
Yeah.
And there's moments in the other films that can go in different directions. This is not going in any different direction. This is just the same old shit done in a very uninspired way. And I don't think the director really knows how to direct a horror film. He's trying to direct an action film. He's trying to do a James Cameron film. Right. It's like, he's trying to do Aliens.
Yeah, he did kind of Cameron it up.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and I was rooting for them because I love hearing them talk about it. They obviously love the first movie. I feel like they were very earnest in wanting to make this film. I think they loved it. I think they just did not know what made the first one work, and they never did. And so they criticized the other sequels for the same shit they just did in this one. Like, you set this whole thing in a hospital. You complained about that from the sequels, and then there you did it. And then you complain about how like he's just an unstoppable monster. There's no finesse. I'm like, well, then why did you do all those things that you criticize?
Well, the last thing I'll say is, the only other part of this in the series that they captured the tone of the first John Carpenter movie is the opening credits of Halloween 4. If you remember that movie, the opening credits are great because it captures Halloween in the Midwest, kind of, just like these wide open spaces, these creepy sort of skeleton, and it captured that. But the rest of the movie is not very good. It kind of lost it. But if you go for that tone, you got me. Because that's what Halloween was to me when I was a kid. It was cold. Yeah. It was like a little creepy. It got dark early. You're going out getting candy from strange, houses. There's that's the element that's missing from this.
Yeah, but like it's scaled back. Like have it like the town should be gutted. And like there should be a lot of closed stores. And there should just be a sad, lonely, depressed economically town. And it's just kind of, barely hanging on, and there should be an element of sadness to it. And then when Michael comes back, it should be this eerie, like he's almost like this thing is kind of almost a dream hovering around. And then I just don't think the slamming through the movie, killing everything in whatever arbitrary way he can is really doing a service to the original kind of heartbreaking, original or origination of Michael, where he's this little kid who's so bad he killed his own sister, and that's kind of hardcore. What happened to that? Where did that little sad story go?
What you're saying and what Mark is saying too is the place is important, and that's something that is sort of almost like a lost art that I feel like the idea of making the place a character as well, and so you have to do character development about your place, like you're saying, have it be desolate, boarded up, economically ruined, and then you have a feel for the place being a part of the character roster. It's
absolutely.
And there's things like you were saying, the very first movie, everybody always mentions the leaves, and so you feel that neighborhood in the very first John Carpenter film, and then the one you were just saying, the opening credits gave you that sense of a place of this. And I remember there was that movie. It's not a great movie, but Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is also kind of a scary movie based on a Ray Bradbury story. But that I remember seeing that and getting a real sense of a place in a horror film, and it's the kind of feeling that you get when you read a horror book, where you get a real outline of a place, like Salem's Lot or something, or something in a Peter Straub book or something, where you feel the neighborhood, the sense of where you are. And that's so important in horror films. Otherwise, you're just on a backlot, Yeah.
Well, Something Wicked This Way Comes, that's a good one, because that was directed by Jack Clayton, who directed The Innocents, I believe. And so he got a sense. You get a sense for place and setting. And that adds so much to directing.
And of course, Ray Bradbury is so into nostalgia and descriptions of childhood and things like that, and memories and all that. And that's, I don't know, that's something that is, I think I already said, is sort of a lost art.
I will say there was a great cameo by Bob Odenkirk.
I was going to try and find the photo so we could show it and put it up there, but go ahead. Yeah, Bob Odenkirk appeared in this.
Well, there's a news story. There's a TV at the bar, and they're talking about these deaths, and they go back to see 40 years ago, blah blah blah. These people died, including P.J. Souls' character. And if you remember in the original film, P.J. Souls was having a little encounter with her boyfriend Bob, who had these glasses on, right? And they wanted to get the original actor and get like a shot of him to kind of put in the newscast. Well, they couldn't find this actor. So they found Bob Odenkirk's original high school yearbook photo. And he has that same sort of big glasses that Bob did in the original Halloween. And so they used him. So that's his cameo. Which I thought was really funny.
That was really cute.
Yeah, so
it was really fun. I think you might enjoy this film if you aren't expecting Halloween. I could see just seeing this big dumb horror movie with a bunch of kills, a lot of blood. You're like, yeah, sure, enjoy it. It's fun, but don't tell me it's Michael Myers. I'm not buying it as Michael Myers. It's not.
I expect Halloween films to be of a certain atmosphere, like the first one, like the way I felt. Maybe that's unfair, but that's what I expect, and it never has happened. So
it seems to be the thing that sticks with me the longest. There's a horror film. I mean, I don't consider myself to be a huge horror movie fan, and yet, like I keep saying, so many of my very favorite movies of all time are horror films. Mm-hmm. So many of them. So horror movies can be very effective, and they can be very haunting and stick with you for your whole life. And the ones that do that, it's like movies like this are popcorn movies where they're fun while you're watching, but then when you leave the theater, you're like, what do you guys want to eat? And
yeah, exactly. You're not
it's like, let's move on to the next entertainment, But a movie, if you go see a movie that has a power in it, like a depth and that word that we always use, haunting. If it haunts you, if it stays with you, you will leave the theater with your friends talking about that movie, and you'll go wherever you want to eat. You'll sit down and you'll still be talking about the movie, examining it. And those are the movies that I think are the timeless ones. And unfortunately, it's easier to make the popcorn movies. Mm-hmm. People don't often take the extra time, and I think they probably make about the same amount of money. I don't know. Maybe this movie will make the same amount of money as a movie that they spent a lot more time working on the script for, and so therefore, why bother wasting time working on the script?
And the
Three people wrote this.
And the studio might say, "Hey, you got to have 25 deaths in this film." They might say stuff like that.
Every certain amount of time there has to be another death, and so if you turn the film on in the middle, you're not gonna lose interest. You're gonna keep watching it.
Did you know, Mark? Especially, I don't know, the ending scene with they have Michael surrounded and they kill him. They try and kill him, and then they have the big. He's not dead, and he jumps up, and he's killing the whole. Which I like seeing the mob get killed because they all freaking deserved it. But it felt like it was shot on a. No, I hope everything at the end. It felt like it was shot on like a seamless. There, like everything had like a black background, and there was just some harsh lighting, and it had him like stabbing a guy in the head, and it's just this black background. Then it almost looked like an art piece. Then it showed another guy getting this stabbed. So he's killing everyone in this weird sort of flat background, which was very strange.
It could have been a thematic choice, like an artistic thematic choice, or it could have been inserts. You know what I mean? It could have been like, crap, we need to cover. We don't have coverage for this, and here's our insert list, and it's like 5 pages of inserts, and so
we'll just shoot it really close up in the dark, and no one will notice it's not in a neighborhood.
Get some sort of large guy to put the costume on, and.
Yeah,
it was part of the whole idea. It was weirdly paced or weirdly put together. It wasn't cohesive. It was like a lot of different stuff going on. It was just like a jumble. I guess that's the definition of a mess.
It's totally off.
Oh,
so anyway, I'm still gonna watch the next one. I'm a Michael Myers fanatic. I have always loved Michael Myers. I think he deserves better. I think he's a great invention, and I feel like we need to get somebody like Ari Aster or somebody who can do a eerie, quiet, creepy versus a big, loud, banging around creepy. I just think that would be a better film. And if they can make 500 Spider-Mans, I think we can do another Halloween that's more like the original. I think it's possible.
Well, the difference is that the Spider-Man movies are really good and fun, and they do the character right, and that's actually a really good example of getting the character, because one of the things about the Marvel superhero films that it gets discussed a lot, I know, but is the fact that they're not getting these sort of hack writers to just let's just write another Spider-Man movie. They're actually going to the source material, and they're staying true to the original comic book ideas, and they're going back to the sort of Steve Ditko stories of Spider-Man. What makes those comics still resonate with us? So they are tapping into the original source material and the concepts of it, and that's why the Spider-Man movies are so much fun. But it's like we were saying, they're not tapping into the source material in a way it's like, why do we still make Halloween movies? It's because of that first Halloween movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's because that was so powerful, and it's such a part of pop culture now, and it will live on. But that's where that character came from, and that's I mean, why are we still making these movies? It's because that movie was so powerful, but they're not tapping into that.
They don't get why it was strong and why it worked.
Yeah.
So I'm still hopeful that down the road we might get another filmmaker who's like, you know what, I'm going to do it right this time. And you never know. Maybe.
And then if they do, that movie would probably be popular.
Then we'll make it. Let's make our own Halloween movie. I'm sure it's so easy.
Oh, yeah. It's so simple.
Must be really hard because no one can do it.
It's easier talking about them.
So there it is. I know that people will be disappointed because when we reviewed the trailer, we got a lot of hate because they feel like we were unnecessarily harsh. And I was like, well, I'm open to the movie. I want the movie to be good because, I love Michael Myers. I want it to happen. And I honestly don't want Michael Myers to die. I want him to keep on going. I'm like kind of rooting for the guy. So, let's have another movie that's better. I just want it to be better. So, I don't mean to insult anyone. I just feel like it should be better.
No, that's our opinion. But feel free to comment and give us your opinion.
Yeah, we'd love to talk about it some more. Now that we've all seen it, we can all really talk about it, get in the weeds about it.
Try to convince us why it's a great film.
Yes, I would love to hear why you think it's great. I do want to hear why people think it's great, and a lot of people do. A lot of people are out there, championing it. So I just want to hear why that's good to them.
Well, on Rotten Tomatoes, it's getting 100% audience reaction, where the actual critics are more like 40%. So that's kind of
in that.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
I wonder if that 100 is going to go down when the people who are voting on it actually watch it.
Could be. I mean, it's only been out a day or two.
We'll give it. Let's give it a week. It is Halloween.
We'll
People want to see a Halloween movie, so I get that.
And also it's near and dear to our hearts because it's one of the originals. It started a lot of things. It gave John Carpenter his career. I mean, there's a lot that happened with that film that's not happening anymore. So
I went back to the theater. I don't even know how many times my friends and I went back to watch it again. And
so good.
And it made us go out and get our own cameras and make our own films. That was an era of films where it was like, wow, there's not any giant special effects in this. It's a guy in a costume. That's the whole, that is the special effect.
Yep.
And the writing of it, the pacing, the directing, and the acting, and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, it made you think, wow, you could make a movie in your neighborhood because that looks like my neighborhood or somebody's fancy neighborhood.
Right.
And one other thing.
Come on, Michael, you could do it. Come back.
The other thing about Michael in the first movie is the way he moved.
Yeah.
Completely different. He moved like this, like almost like not a robot, but there was definitely deliberate actions. He moved the way he shot, like sort of creeping behind a shrub, or sort of like sitting up and then turning his head like this.
Yes,
that stuff
almost
was scary.
robotic.
Here he's almost kind of just there's one scene he's running, like he ran up into a guy, and so that's not Michael Myers. That scares me.
Yeah.
So anyway,
he's the creepy
that's a little thing.
Slow. Yeah. So anyway, that's it.
Anyway. Okay, that's our take.
There it is.
Halloween Kills. We kind of killed Halloween Kills.
I'm sorry, you guys. We really wanted to like it.
But you know what? It's Halloween. We need good stuff for Halloween. It needs to be, this time of year needs to be when the really good movies come out, the good scary movies come out, and we're recommending them, and we're saying, this is such a great movie to sit and watch on Halloween. What a great season for films. And
give me a good scary movie. That's what I want. If you guys have a scary movie out there that you like to watch on Halloween, let us know because we're going to do a big Halloween episode anyway. So we'd love to hear.
Absolutely. And in fact, if our viewers and listeners would tell us movies that they think are the scariest movies of all time and their go-to Halloween films, we'll put them in an episode because we want to do we do a yearly episode every year for the last 35 years. I think we've been doing the podcast.
Our podcast for 30.
Is it 36? Yeah, 36 years.
Cinemondo's pretty old.
But
we did The Omen the first year. So
it came out. We were so cute in that, weren't we? We were little kids.
This is adorable.
Doing the podcast. It was so adorable.
I wore my beanie.
Yeah. But the thing is, we talk about it. We'll talk every year. We talk about what are the scariest movies, and that's sort of tradition, Halloween tradition. So tell us what the scariest movies you have ever seen. What is it? What movie scared you
Tell us.
to your core and has never left you?
Join us.
Join us.
Join us
All right.
next
See you
time.
guys next time.
Bye.
Take
See ya.
care, everybody. Bye. Happy Halloween.